I have these friends, Dan and Sheila. They're podcast hosts.
Welcome to Profiling Criminal Minds. I'm Dan.
And I'm Dr. Redmond.
And we are back for more episodes of Profiler. And I'm just going to say right off the bat, perfectly acceptable episode, no complaints. You know what really impressed me this week?
What?
Well, first, something really interesting happens in the second episode. But I know that it's weird because, of course, we started this with Criminal Minds, which has a very up in the air, inconsistent idea of where serial killers come from. And, of course, then we moved on to our beloved Millennium, which is just demons. It's all demons. It's almost entirely demons.
So that's,
but it's just, and I think you're going to back me on this, it's interesting how clear-eyed this show is, that it's like, yeah, you can beat kids into being serial killers. Like, the show is just, it's very clear about that. Because in this first episode, they're like horribly abused, right? And they talk about how like horrifically abused this guy was in the foster care system, right? And she's like, where do you think these killers come from?
Well, she makes that
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right?
That's what she said.
Okay, yeah. The only thing that I would say is that at the same time, I'm going, if we apply our scale of 1 to 10 to whether
how
or not
she's using, how profiling is helping solving that.
Yeah, I mean, that was when we got to that second episode, and that's when it sort of dawned on me. Well, yeah, but profiling. Please? Like, I thought it was really interesting. Like, yeah, I don't have any problems with these 2 episodes, but in terms of profiling, helping to solve cases,
oh no, they don't need her there. Like, no.
Absolutely.
As a general rule, the show has not made a case for why she needs to be there at all. The first guy, they got fingerprints. Like, they know who it is for most of the episode.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to find him.
That's all. They don't need her to find him, really.
No, they just keep going, right, until they find his place is empty. He's got no address they can find, so they check, the last foster home he was in.
Anyway,
and it turns out that's where he was. But yes, the point is, it's
but as I said, it's more Dirty Harry.
Well, yes, exactly. It's funny because this episode, it's weird. Thinking about it now, I can tell you everything that happens in the episode. I can tell you what the plot is, and there's some interesting stuff to discuss here. First mention of roofies in television that I remember. That was nice. But one thing that gets me when I'm thinking about it is that, and I know this happens to you all the time, so I'm just saying, I've joined you in this. This episode went out of my head as I started the next episode. Like, the minute I pressed play in the second episode, I could not tell you one thing about the previous episode. So I went back and I checked and I've refreshed my memory, but literally, like, the second it was done. It is like the frothiest, most effervescent and ephemeral confection you can possibly have. It is bubbly. It is effective.
Cotton candy.
But it is cotton candy, and it disappears the minute it touches your tongue.
Yeah.
So yes, it is cotton. It is weird to call this cotton candy television, but I think your term there is completely right.
It's just like last week when we did it, and I'm going.
I know I watched this episode. Was your response? That was your response. Yeah. You're like, I know I watched this. Like, it definitely happened.
Both of them. But it was a week ago.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
now we're watching them a little closer. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, I watched them last night.
And I watched them last night and this morning. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
That's right. I rewatched a bunch of the first episode to get ready for this. Oh.
This is what I count on you to do.
Yeah.
And you have, and this is amazing because you have this point by point, right?
Generally, I can give you point by point what happens in an episode. Yeah.
Yeah. And we always get into these arguments because I get it mixed up often. And no, you very seldom are you wrong in your construction.
As a general
with this, yes. it's just fluff.
Yeah, it really is.
There's weird. No substance to it.
None whatsoever.
I think cotton candy. The question is what color of cotton candy, but other than that.
Yeah, that's the real issue. We do get major movement on the Jack storyline this week.
Yes. No, this is that's what makes the second
episode even
more. And by the way, Angel is in the front credits now.
Oh, nice.
So,
yeah.
Yes.
That's
so
good.
she
will be around a while longer anyway.
Yeah, she will have something to say and do every week.
It is. They are having a hard time coming up with stuff for her to say and do, though.
Well, yes,
I don't think they regret having this character. I'm just saying it's hard to involve her in these stories.
Well, yeah, because she's basically home doing her art and taking care of
the daughter,
whose name starts with a C.
It's not important what her name is.
Is it Chloe?
Maybe. I'm not. I will not. I will die in the hill that it is not important what her daughter's name is.
No, it's just
she is
her
not
daughter.
An important character the way Jordan is on Millennium.
Oh yeah,
she's just there.
Yes,
Jordan,
although you had to wonder when she had her first dreams. Okay, so actually, what I said is this an indication of psychic? But no, by the time you get to the end of the episode, and I said I wonder how they're going to explain it. Well, actually, they did a really good job. I was like this. Technically, these episodes don't have much to complain about.
No. I do. I stand by my statement at the beginning.
Yeah.
They're perfectly good episodes of television.
Perfectly good episodes. We're not going to sit here and say they need massive rewrites or anything. No, I mean, it's just, I mean, it's kind of fluff. So
it is fluff. So the episode begins with a woman being kidnapped, and we find out that this is the latest in a series of women who have been kidnapped. And she is the third one. The first was a college student who was kidnapped from her room. The second one was an elderly woman with Alzheimer's who was kidnapped from an outing that her home was taken to at a park that has
at the carousel.
A park that has a carousel.
Every now and then I look at some of these sets and go, geez, we've been here before, haven't we?
Oh, definitely. There are only so many places to film around Los Angeles. 100%. We have seen this exact carousel in a bunch of TV shows.
Yeah.
I can guarantee that. I don't think that there are 18 carousel parks around Los Angeles. There's probably just the one. And it's even if this episode is set in Maryland, they're certainly not flying outside of the city limits of Los Angeles to film the thing. That's where their permits are.
I mean, this is just because I'm watching Hellbound and I'm thinking about what the Koreans do. Oh, jeez, the money they put into their TV series. Yeah. But never mind. And we think that Profiler is spending an awful lot. And they do because they have an awful lot of extras constantly and everything else.
That big scene in front of the prison in the next episode.
Yeah.
Night shooting with 200 extras. You can't imagine a show doing that now. Nope. I was an extra. I know what an ordeal it is to get 200 people out there in the middle of the night to shoot a bunch of scenes. It's not
in Laval.
Easy. Oh my God.
In a prison in Laval.
That was actually pretty great. Hey, you got to see David Bowie.
I got to see David Bowie.
Yeah, I got to be in a TV show with David Bowie. Thank you very much.
So
you got to see him. There you go. To say what you will about extra work, I got to see David Bowie.
I got to work with David Bowie. You got
to see him. I got to work with David Bowie. Yeah. But anyway, the important part is, people are being kidnapped and they're assuming this latest woman is dead because there's blood everywhere. And they take the question, well, why would he bother taking the bodies? And there wasn't blood left everywhere at the other scenes. So they're like, is he escalating? What's going on here? And
at least question. we don't get decompensating. So I'm happy.
But they're like, if he brutally murdered her, why did he take the body? And she's like, because he's not done with it. Doom, doo, doo,
Yeah.
doo.
Boom.
Just creepy and awful implications there. But it turns out quickly enough that it was goat's blood. Right? It was goat's blood, and this was part of a ritual that the killer is taking part in. And we learn they investigate the first girl's house, and they discover that he left a poem.
Yes.
Right? Well, not like lines from a poem.
Yeah, and a little straw
doll.
sort of doll.
Yeah. A straw doll.
They find this,
thing.
so they decide to look everywhere else for it, and they find it in all of the
victims' areas. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, this is why I say it's a police procedural more than it is a profiling show for sure. So they find out, so tracking down is let's find out who sells goats.
Not only who sells goats, but what is the significance of the poem? And it turns
the poems.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it turns out that it's about the ages of woman, right? When she is a child, when she is sexually mature, when she becomes a mother, and when she is elderly. And they realize, wait a minute, the one thing the women have in common is that they are all different ages. And in fact, they notice, and I thought this was actually a good catch, psychologically speaking. Yeah. You were right that it is not a very psychological episode, but it's a good catch, psychologically speaking, that they noticed that the teenager in college, that her room has been changed to make it more like a child's room. Like the killer has removed everything that might make her seem like an adult, right? And that is to make her fit his idea of like what he needs for this ritual, the 4 ages of woman, without actually having to have a child get kidnapped on the show.
Yeah, and killed.
Well, no, nobody gets killed.
Well, no, but the intention was to kill.
Yeah, the intention was to kill. But I'm just saying, I'm talking about like the show. It's more annoying to have I'm saying from a production standpoint, having to hire a child actor and do all of that. It's much easier if you can just, it's an 18-year-old, but he's infantilized her. And I'm just saying it's as much of a production reality as it is the character's motivation.
Yes, well, I'll give this one to the character.
Oh, completely. And so
because at the very end, you feel a little bit sad for him. Not much, but a little bit. Because he hasn't killed anybody yet.
He doesn't actually. Well, no, he killed one person.
Oh, well, no, he killed the one guy.
He killed. Well, no, I guess technically he killed a second person earlier.
Okay,
because he killed the foster mother.
Well, yes. Or did she die of natural causes?
It's hard to say.
We don't know. I would
for sure.
He kills the man, and they can't figure out. Like they find a man.
Yeah.
There's somebody else who's disappeared.
Yeah. Well, no. What happens is it's not that somebody else has disappeared. They go through the security cameras.
Oh yes, and then
they talk to the nurse who was there when the woman was when the woman disappeared. The elderly woman disappeared, and talks about how she heard that there was an ice cream truck in the area, and she would have liked to get an ice cream for the various people, but you can't. It's part of their policy to not give them any food when they're not actually at the facility. Mm-hmm. And so, but they're like, okay, well, ice cream truck. Okay, that would be a great place to hide someone. And so they go and they look for the ice cream truck, and they find security footage of a guy getting into the ice cream truck and driving off. And they realize this is how the old lady was kidnapped.
Yes.
And so they find the ice cream truck at a junkyard, having been disposed of, and they go there and they find another guy's dead body in the ice cream truck. So that's how we get to the ice cream truck. And then the guy happens to be there at the exact same time, and he shoots at them and he hits Julian McMahon. in an injury that doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't affect anything.
No, what I was going to say is that they had to fill in a whatever at some point. I guess like that was one of the useless scenes in the entire thing. But
yeah,
you know,
and also Jack goes and he leaves a bomb just, to keep attention on himself, because he is nothing if not, a whore for attention.
Yeah.
He goes and he leaves a bomb in the bathroom stall where he killed somebody last week. And he puts a fingerprint on the bomb, and the fingerprint is of the doctor who delivered Sam, who he killed, as we learned last week.
Yes.
So there's like a follow-up. No mention of where Nick is now. I think he's going to be out of the relationship. He certainly isn't mentioned other than it seems like a direct shot at him that he left a bomb, which it probably is. But his goal was to get that guy out of Sam's life, and he seems to have accomplished that without killing him. So we probably won't be hearing from Nick again. Although I'm only basing that on the fact that he wasn't in either of this week's episode, despite the fact that he was her steady last week.
Yes.
All right. So
we'll talk about that all when we get.
Oh,
Okay, but how come they end up at the? Okay, so they go to the junkyard.
Yeah.
They find there's a dead guy at the junkyard, and it's not our killer.
No, it's not the killer
or our kidnapper. Excuse me.
It's
at
not
this
the
point.
It's someone he's murdered.
It's someone he's murdered, and we can't kind of figure out why. But he's picked up a prostitute.
What has happened is this guy is a pimp.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to figure out is because there's somebody who got away.
Yes.
Like this tells you. I watched it yesterday.
I know, and it goes right out of your head. What they find on him, right, is the traces of the roofies, and they find a woman who was hospitalized for ingesting those, for having been drugged with roofies, and so they go see her at the strip club, right? And at the strip club, she tells the story about how she took, a bit of a sip of something, and suddenly she was following the guy out to the car. She didn't know why. She was really, she was confused. And again, she's been roofied. So of course happened. But her boyfriend was there, and he roughed the guy up, and the guy ran off. And then they realized that this pimp's girl is missing, right? And so that must be the victim he got to replace the stripper who he was unable to kidnap.
Yes, that's how it worked. Yeah. Now, well, how did they end up at the strip bar?
Because they had the record of the hospiitalization of someone who had been roofied. Yeah, that's how they get to the strip.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. And so she recognizes the guy.
Oh yeah.
They show her the picture. They show her a picture, and she says, "Yeah, that's the guy."
But they don't know where he is. And so by this time, they figured out they find a book, right? Mm-hmm. Of the I think it was in the truck. I'm trying to remember exactly, but they find a book of the insane religion he believes in, right?
Yes.
They find a book describing the insane religion he believes in. And they decide, and so they realize that he's trying to create a whole, they describe it as create a whole woman, i.e. the entire experience of womanhood. And if he can bring her with him to the other side, he will get his heaven, is what he believes. But they have to all die at once, and they all have to die at a very specific time. When, what moon was it? It wasn't solstice, it was... The point is, he says a specific day, and it was 3 days away when they started it, and it takes them 3 days to catch him.
Yes.
But they know who it is. They unseal his record of his horrific upbringing. This is where we find out of his horrific upbringing, right? That caused his problems with women. And he looked for some kind of salvation in this, bizarre religion. And so he's trying to create the perfect version of womanhood that was denied to him by not having a mother.
Except that no. That's not really what's going on. What's going on is that he's trying to please the woman that he calls mother, which is his foster mother. Mm-hmm. He's trying to please her, and he's going to create, and she is supposed to be the motherhood.
Right. Yes. That's a much better way to describe it.
And then he's going to try and please. This whole thing is to please her, to bring all of this together so that they can all be
together in the afterworld.
in the afterworld, right?
And yes, the perfect mother figure that he's trying to create, you're right, is an extension of this foster mother who was presumably his abuser and has, put him in this, has led to him becoming.
And this is why I suspect, given the little.
You're right. He probably didn't kill her. And in fact, his psychosis was triggered by her death. And he went searching for a way
So he wanted to bring her back again.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. I think you're right. He probably didn't kill her. In all likelihood, the only person he killed was that pimp.
Yeah.
Okay, I think you're right. And he tried to kill Julian McMahon, but that's...
Well, yes, he tried to kill Julian. And he was, his intention was to kill these 4 women.
Of course.
No, 3 women.
4 women.
His dead, no.
No, there were 4. There's the teenager, there's the mother he kidnapped at the beginning, there's the elderly woman, and then there's the prostitute. That's the 4 women.
That's right. Yes. That's the 4 women.
Yeah, that's the 4 women he's got all lined up and all going to be executed with lethal injection all at the same time as he injects himself. So
yes, this is how we learn, because he's talking.
Yeah.
He's explaining all of this to them and how happy they should be. And this is, and there's going to be no pain in their death. And so, he wanted to assure them that there was going to be no pain in their death. And you're just listening to the lunatic.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to get there on time, and they do.
Oh, yeah, they do. And Sam, it's interesting because they have her do a psychological trick to delay him by having her explain that, in fact, the ceremony won't work because the woman isn't a mother because she adopted, right, a kid. And whether that's true or not, right, whether that's true or not, probably isn't. It delays him long enough to distract him so they can move in and do the clever thing of shooting the reservoir of all of the drugs.
Yeah.
That all of the drugs that was going to kill them were coming out of. I thought that was a nice touch.
Oh, yeah. No, as I said, in terms of the plot mechanics, they do the right things. Like, it's so much...
After the famous botching of things that we see the team on Criminal Minds so frequently do, it's nice to see these guys being just super professional all the time.
Well, you know what? But here's the point. We're still watching Criminal Minds.
Oh, yeah.
You had to talk me into watching this thing, and we're calling it cotton candy.
Yes. Well, and I think...
it's good. It's solid.
Good. It is solid, but the thing that Criminal Minds has that this show doesn't have is style and interesting characters.
That's exactly it. They should have picked a different lead.
Yeah, a different lead would have helped, and the supporting characters just aren't that interesting.
No.
Like... There's Julian McMahon's partner who, for the life of me, I don't understand why they need 2 cops on the show. Like, why do they have this extra cop there? Roma Mafia almost never has anything to do. They got the tech guy who's there sometimes, and it's like, think of how tough it would be. And again, maybe he'll grow on us, the tech guy, for example. Yeah. But how boring would Criminal Minds be if... instead of being a delight Garcia. In every scene, like Garcia is, this guy was the tech person we had to come to every week.
And just think about, Kevin, right? Yeah. Was a more interesting tech guy than this guy.
Yeah, like none of these other characters have a lot of color, right? I like Roma Mafia. There's nothing wrong with her, but her character... doesn't have a lot going on yet, and we're almost half a season in.
Yeah, I know. It is surprising. That's what I find. It is because it's as if they spent all their money on music, which is still a problem. And their sets and the production values are good.
Yeah.
They're probably excellent.
Oh yeah, I'd say so.
I would say they are excellent. It's a little fuzzy because, of course, we've got videotaped copies.
I know. No, but it looks great. And remember, this is a show that was only being watched on 22-inch televisions.
That's right.
This wasn't a show meant to be watched on the big screens that we're watching them on now.
Yes, and my computer monitor is bigger than 22 inches.
Your computer monitor is bigger than the TV we had growing up. And it's just your computer monitor. This is my point, right?
Yeah.
So there you go.
There you go. So it's interesting that for all of its flaws, Criminal Minds created characters. I thought you might say Spencer Reed, right?
Well, yeah, but no, I mean, Spencer Reed goes without saying. No, but I'm saying I'm just using Garcia, him as an example.
Yeah, that's the good guy. That's the good
from episode 1, right? Yeah. Like, we are on board with all of these characters' quirks. Whereas here, like, Sam's got a tragic backstory, and Bailey is just Dennis Farina from Manhunter. You know, like, we watched that first episode, and they're just doing a scene from Manhunter, and he's Dennis Farina. Yeah. There's no depth to the character beyond just being Dennis Farina from Manhunter, right? Yeah. And I'm sure we'll learn more about him later, but we're almost half a season in, and we haven't really learned anything about these people yet. And the people are what we're invested in, and the people are what keep us coming back with Criminal Minds. Like, no matter how mediocre an episode might be, we're always there for the characters.
Yes. And I would say if only Bailey's name was like Tony. Yes,
that would help a lot.
It's really weird that it still bothers me.
I know. Bailey
Malone.
Robert Davi playing. Well, no, but it shows you. It's actually like, we joke, but it shows you how little thought they're putting into the characters.
Yeah.
Okay, well, how do we they didn't care about tailoring this character to Robert Davi's skill set to the point where they didn't even change the name from the most Irish character name in history. Because they're just like, no, we've got Robert Davi. That's the end of the work. He'll come in. He'll have a gruff voice. He'll look at her sympathetically. Done. That's all you need to do. You know?
And he'll try and get a date. And,
yes.
You know, and blow it. He didn't blow it. It's stupid. He's obviously blown it before that point.
Exactly.
So, you know, I mean, no, but if only he had,
But that's my point, is they're not putting the thought in to what they can do with these characters, right? Yeah, and how these characters might have more elaborate lives, and the fact that they didn't even change the character name to be better suited to the actor shows that they're not thinking that deeply about the characters, other than Sam, and to a certain extent her daughter.
Yeah, and this is why, and even Angel, right?
Yeah.
We've talked before about how Angel probably would have been better as the lead.
100%. No question.
Sure. Yeah.
We've seen her in so many things. We've loved her. I mean, come on, she was in Intelligence. One of the best shows Canada ever made.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and she was fantastic in that.
And she suffers, I think, from the James Pattison problem.
What's that?
Well, you know what I said a couple about Cross, right?
Yeah.
Who knew he was black?
Right. Yeah. That she's not going to be, they weren't going to cast a black person in the lead in this show at the time. Right.
I think that's probably it, because, the only reason you would know.
Yeah.
Right. Is if you had seen, Intelligence, or if you had seen Babylon 5, the one episode where she was.
Yeah.
Which was
she's
just
so good.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And so different from this
completely different character.
Yeah.
She's a great actress. Like, that's not a huge shock. And it's frustrating, you're right, watching it, because, like, you're seeing somebody there who could have been a better main character. So,
yeah.
But I mean, if the thing is, like, if the main character was as interesting as Spencer Reed, I think we'd be talking about the show very differently. But Sam's just not that engaging, and Ali Walker isn't, you know, the kind of magnetic on-screen presence that, as you say, even Angel is.
Yeah, it is. There's just something, I don't know what it is. I don't know who told her to play it this way, or whether it's who she is and she's decided to play it this way. But there's just something missing, even when she's, you know, like the lines, right? Okay, let's talk about one line.
Please.
Okay, the daughter's line is, "Don't be angry with me, Mom."
Yeah.
And the first thing I'm thinking, but your mother didn't even yell at you. Your mother, all she said was, "Oh, why didn't you tell me?"
Yeah. And the thing is,
and I'm going, and
why
then
is Ali Walker not playing it as if, like, why is there not a desperation in, because she has just found out that her
This
daughter
is horrible.
saw Jack in the house right after her husband was killed, right? This
Not
is
only that, and
horrific.
Jack interacted with
her daughter.
Winked at her and went, shh.
Yeah. And she kept quiet about it because she was afraid and didn't know how to process this horrible thing that happened because her dad disappeared. Yep. And she was too young to even understand that her dad had died because she was like 4 when this happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So what bothers me is, like, why didn't Sam, like, why wasn't she freaking out? Because you're right. She should have been freaking out. And her daughter should have interpreted the freaking out as her being mad at her. But the way she plays it, right? The way Ali Walker plays it is just kind of a flat response. Like,
Very
she's
flat.
interested, but there's no edge to it that would make her daughter think she was in trouble.
And even, you see, this is what is, like, I guess that's that, and that's exactly it. I mean, that was the one that stood out. But even the earlier one with the window, that, you know, and then they say, well, there's no ladder or anything. It must be a bad dream. And, you know, we saw the dream that her daughter had.
Yeah.
And you don't know that this is what you find out at the end, of course, is that her daughter is afraid that this man will come back. Yeah. Because she now knows that this man killed her father.
Mm-hmm. And
like,
that's
she's
who they're
much
on the
older.
run from. Yeah.
And that's who they're on the run from. So then he hears, and he may have actually tiptoed into her room at one point.
Yeah. That's possible.
And she's not actually conscious of that. Mm-hmm. It probably woke her up. You know, so there's that. But the thing is that I'm going, well, why don't you just draw the curtains?
I know.
Instead of telling your daughter there's nobody there and it was a dream.
Just draw the curtains. Yeah.
Just draw the curtains. Why are the curtains open anyway?
It's weird how, like, it's weird that it's so rarely can we say, was the problem that this show had that it didn't have good directors? Because we previously, my big thing from the second episode that I think when I talked about how the show was better written than the people making it seem to realize was that they didn't milk the moment of the guy saying, I hear they have childproof lighters now. And they didn't, like, the show didn't seem to understand how important that was. And again, I feel like maybe if you had a director there to tell Ali Walker, you got to be more intense with this. You've got to be scaring your daughter with how, like, you've got to be so desperate to find out this information that it's scary to your daughter. And she's just not. And there was no one there to tell her to do that. The problem is the daughter is acting as if she had to behave that way, right? The daughter is acting like, whoever was prepping the daughter and directing the daughter understood what was going on in the script, right?
Yes.
But I guess Ali Walker didn't, or the director didn't, and no one explained to them, here's what is going on in the script. She is so desperate to find this out that her daughter thinks she's being attacked. And she is traumatizing her daughter because of her need to find this information. And then she's horrified at what she's done. And she has to convince her daughter that she's not mad at her. Like, that is what's going on in that scene. And that is how the daughter is playing it. But it's not how Ali Walker is playing it.
Yeah. And that's
it hurts the show.
Yeah, it does. There's no question. There was a guy by the name of Ian Sander directed it. Okay. Maybe it is the directors.
Who knows? Maybe they just don't have the right directors. Who the hell knows? It's this weird situation where it's like, this is a show that is better written than it is produced. Yeah. I think that's fair to say. All right. So, let's talk about the second episode, which is, again, about an interesting idea, which is they're taking on the idea of women who become obsessed with serial killers. Which, okay, I'm going to ask something crazy. Like, Criminal Minds only did this with Angel Maker, right? Like, that was the only time they ever broached this issue? Because Divining Rod isn't about that. Divining Rod is about a woman who people want to become serial killers to impress. For some reason. So it's not really about that. It's not like she was horny for serial killers. Men got horny for her and became serial killers for some reason. that the show never really figured out. I love that episode. It's not great. But it was Angelmaker's the only one about a serial killer groupie, right?
I'm thinking, yes, I don't think they didn't go to the trough.
Again,
you could say
that one
came close to the trough, but
I don't think they ever really addressed that again. Okay, good. Yeah, because the guy who's writing serial killer fan fiction, right? Writing his fantasies, that's not the same thing.
No,
that's not the same thing. All right, so the point I'm getting at is, it's just interesting seeing a take on it that is so clear-eyed. It's, again, we're talking about the psychology here and how impressed I was with the cast-off line last episode about where do you think these killers come from? They come because they were abused, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's because you're abusing these kids and that's how they become serial killers. And this week, like, someone says, I don't understand why women get obsessed with these serial killers. And, like, there is such an unbelievably clear answer to the question that I was blown away. Like, it's not treated as a mystery at all. They're like, well, they were abused. They suffered from abuse at the hands of men for a lot of their lives. And so that gets, they don't say this, but likely, were the victims of sexual assault. And this has screwed up their attraction idea, and they're only attracted to violent men. And these are, the most violent men, but they're in jail, so they're not actually a threat to them. And it's like, yeah, that is a 100% clear and justifiable, right? Explanation of the phenomenon that actually maps really well to all of the serial killer groupies I can think of. Like, there are these women whose sexuality gets warped by sexual assault at a young age, and they get fixated on these violent men, but they need the safe version of a violent man, and that's a violent man who's already in jail. Like, yep, dead on. Like, you got it. You nailed it, show. Like, you nailed it more than I thought it was possible to nail that. And again, it's like, it's so weird because we have been trained by Criminal Minds and so many other shows. Because Criminal Minds is about 8 different profilers all saying roughly the same thing. It's so weird on a show that's just about the one profiler. So because there's only one voice of authority, instead of everyone sitting around talking about their theories, someone just asks her a question and she answers it. Because the research has already been done on this subject and she's read the books about it. Like, she has read the dissertations on the subject of this thing. So we don't need to sit around here theorizing. We can just say what the answer is. Oh, man. I loved it. So yeah, a guy's in jail and people are killing for him, right? So people are being, it takes them a minute to figure out why. So these two women, in fact, have been murdered in a very specific way. They have been locked in a cage and they have been tortured inside the cage. And they have been killed by being suffocated. And Sam looks at this unbelievably elaborate and specific MO and she's like, quite reasonably, this looks a lot like what happens in prison. You're locked up, you're shocked with electric prods, there is a flashing light, right? You can't decide when the lights go on and off. Right? So there's a flashing light that essentially wakes you up all the time. Like, all of her justification for saying this is prison related, I think is really logical.
Oh yeah. Don't have it. I'm going to sit here and listen to you talk and I'm just going to go, I don't disagree with any of it.
Yeah. I think it's really logical how they stretch this out. I think it makes a ton of sense. I was legit very impressed with how clear-eyed it is about it. I really think it is. I thought that was very well done. So you've got that. And then they say, okay, well, these women, if it's prison related, and the logic is, could both of these women have been involved in a trial in some way? Right?
Yeah.
So could both of them have been involved in a trial? And that's why these two women are targeted, right? What, again, completely reasonable assumption to make. And yes, it turns out that both of them were involved in a trial. right? And
Yeah.
of a guy who Gary Gilmore style,
Yes.
largely who this is based on, Gary Gilmore style, a guy who, you know, robbed a convenience store and killed somebody and then and is now being put to death. And Gary Gilmore, good enough looking guy, and did have women come on to him in prison. Like, nobody was killing people over him, but, you know, yeah, this is very much Gary Gilmore related.
Mhm.
Yeah. Fun fact, in the TV movie, played by Tommy Lee Jones. There you go.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
know, the man who said, just get it over with, please.
Just get it over with.
I did it.
Yeah.
Kill me.
Yeah.
Please.
Tell me.
I
Let's
don't
go.
need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't need this whole production.
No.
Yeah,
Just
he was a
get on
weird
with
guy,
it.
that Gary Gilmore. But anyway, so they figure out, and they're like, okay, well, who would be obsessed? Like, who would kill for this guy? Would it be his partner? Because he had a partner in the robbery who did not pull the trigger, right? He, of course, claims the partner pulled the trigger, but there was an eyewitness to the crime, and she's one of the people who got murdered. So it's probably like, is it the partner who got off? No, he's not in state, so he's definitely not the one doing the crime. And so Sam makes the jump. I'm crediting the actress with figuring this out. Makes the jump, quite logically, that it could easily be a woman because all of these people had a taser used to subdue them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so they weren't overpowered violently, they were overpowered with a taser. And so then they start talking about what is the psychology of women who are obsessed with murderers. And they look at all of the women who correspond, and they find 5 ladies who were extremely rabid correspondents with him, right? And 3 of them are, in fact, in state right now. One of them is a woman who just massively opposes the death penalty. Like, just goes around fighting for the rights of anybody who is on death row. And yeah, she seems fixated on this guy, but not as sexually as the other women.
Yeah.
And then there's his lawyer, right? Who tries to keep them from being able to open his correspondence. Because she's like, I'm fighting for this man's rights. I'm not just going to turn over all of his turn all of this stuff to you, to try and use against him, involved in a murder, right? To get him charged with more murders. Which, you know what? Like, as a lawyer, I totally get that.
Well, yeah. Plus, it's the old problem, right? There's not really an awful lot of sense in when somebody's already on death row,
charging them with more crimes.
Unless you want to get the crimes off the books, of course.
But of course, sometimes you might really try to get them by dismissing all of the charges of the old crimes that they actually committed. Sorry. Okay. I will never avoid a chance to talk about the worst line of dialogue in the history of Criminal Minds. Oh my God. All right. So let's get back to it. I'm sorry.
It's too funny.
It is funny, though, in my defense. All right, so there's a scene. So they go and Sam profiles that the lawyer, right, is obsessed with this guy as well. He's just, he's just magnetically attractive to women. What are you going to say? He's already had 2 trials. This is the lawyer came in on the 2nd trial, trying to save him and failed, right? I don't know how he got a 2nd trial. It's like what the hell was going on with the police? He walked into a convenience store and he shot the person at the till, and then he walked out and somebody saw it. And like, how was there a 2nd trial?
How was this screwed up?
Yeah, how did they screw it up this badly, But the point is, she had failed. And so they're racking their brains, trying to figure out who the killer would target, right? The DA, the judge, like, who are the kind of person that this would charge? And then the idea is, wait a minute, what about his lawyer, the woman who failed to free him? Which is a reasonable thing. Right? That's a completely reasonable thing to assume. And so they can't get in touch with her. They can't get in touch with the lawyer. They go to her to warn her, but she's disappeared. And so they go to the guy on death row and confront him with what's going, because he has not been interested in helping them, because he just says he's innocent and he doesn't want to work with the cops over anything, which, is fair. He's about to be executed. But then they find out that his lawyer is the one who's kidnapped, and he actually seems to open up to them, right? And he maintains his innocence and says he never wanted anyone to die, but even though even though he doesn't quite believe them, he'll help them find this woman. And so they point out the two women, because they've got the two women left who have moved to be near him, right? And they give him the two names and ask who of them is crazier, right? Which of the two of them should we be focusing on? Because she's probably going to try and kill your lawyer before you get put to death. And this is the key moment in the show. And this is why this episode impressed me a little. Because they do the thing. Like, they do that thing that we love, where he says, you're going to want to point on this one. And he talks about how her letters grew more insane and how he begun to suspect. And it's like, and they say, well, why didn't you, call and save me? Because I didn't know anybody was dying until you came to see me. Which is actually a pretty good excuse.
Yeah.
And then they walk out of there, and Sam is like, okay, let's go get the other one, the one he didn't say.
Yeah.
Because the thing is...
Have you seen a TV show
Have you seen a TV show before? But what I liked about it was that, at the end of the day, you're like, how bad is this guy? Because we're never really 100% sure. He enjoys exploiting women. He enjoys the control he has over them, all of that. But they want to let you know right in his last act, right? That, there is no love here. There is no devotion here. There is he really is a complete monster. Because if he cared at all about his lawyer, right? He would have told them who to go for, right? He would have told them the truth.
Yes.
The one who was sending the craziest letters. But he has the opportunity, to take someone with him on the way out. Exactly.
Yeah, one last manipulation.
Before
I die.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like they leave you knowing exactly who this guy was. And that's why I enjoyed the episode. Yeah. It's something they did with Criminal Minds. It's like, that Adrian Bale, that's right, I remember the name of the Mad Bomber from episode 3, would like to, will never again in his life have a chance to blow somebody up. And, it doesn't matter to him. The opportunity to blow someone up is more important to him than whatever he benefits he could get from the cops for stopping the crime. The thrill he would get from getting to kill somebody one more time would be worth it. And that's exactly what this guy's doing. And so, yeah, I thought psychologically it made perfect sense. It tracks with the kind of, glib and hollow charm the guy evidences in the episode. It all completely tracks. The guy's very well cast. He looks like Billy Ray Cyrus. It's you want a trashy, low-class, handsome man, you've cast exactly the right guy. Right? No, just
yeah, no, it's true.
A guy who is his entire life has been a series of violent screw-ups. He's not particularly smart, right? He has no real skills or anything, but in an amazing twist of fate, genetically speaking, God built the handsomest man, and so he's been able to get away with a lot for most of his life. Right? Yeah. He's got his shallow charm, and he's got this shallow charm, and he's got these looks that allow him to get away with anything. And this is how far it's taken him. But it's not a true mullet. I'm sorry. No, it's not a true mullet. You're right. He's not the full Billy Ray.
He's not the full Billy.
But you can't tell me I'm wrong in saying that he's that exact type. I have perfectly described his type as dime store Billy Ray Cyrus.
Yeah.
So they rush to this woman's house, and it's great because in the beginning of the episode, we saw her interacting with a dog. Mm-hmm. Right, and we find out that the psychology of this woman is that she would volunteer. We have no idea where her money is coming from because she has somewhere to live, but she doesn't have a job. So she obviously has some, family money sitting there somehow. That's never explained. but she volunteers at clinics, right? She is a rescuer. She loves helping. And her house is absolutely full of dogs because she could not bear to let any dogs be killed. So she just adopts all of the dogs that don't get adopted. And that is the same psychology of taking in strays that has her becoming obsessed with this, dangerous man. Like, the psychology of it, I think, works perfectly.
No problem with the episode per se, except that I can thinking about it. Okay, is this the first time I've ever seen this? Was this the first time this was ever done?
What are we talking about?
Well, no, the idea of the crazy guy who gets the women to do
the serial killer groupie,
the serial
murdering
killer
for
groupie,
him.
For him and stuff. And I don't
know if it's the first time. It's one of the first times, definitely.
It has to be one of the first times.
Yeah.
But I tell you, and then went, see, because that's the problem that I have, is that I've seen so many of these now. We have seen this is post Hannibal Lecter.
Yep.
So we've seen it all there. There wasn't anything. This is a competent episode.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely competent.
And it is more memorable than the previous episode.
Yes,
definitely.
except that, except for the Jordan part. I mean, except for the Chloe part.
Call her the Jordan. Oh my God, that's so perfect.
Except for her daughter.
Yeah, her daughter.
The Chloe. We'll call her Chloe right now.
We will find out what her name is later and call her that. But for now, we're calling her Chloe. But yeah, except for that part, this is the better episode.
Yes, for sure. And it tracks.
And it's down
fine.
to casting. The woman who turns out to be the killer plays her delusion really well. Yeah. When we finally meet her, like it's acted very well. Sam doesn't, there's nothing Sam can screw up with her questionable acting choices. So I really enjoyed that. And I keep talking about how shocked I am with how casually they're just presenting us Jack. And this episode goes so far and above and beyond everything we've seen before. Because we just see him hanging out in his house on the phone with his mother.
Is this his job? Or is this his hobby? Is tracking Sam his job or his hobby?
It's a really good question. It's so weird to watch because you're like, he's just to see him. Again, this is something you never would have seen on The Mentalist and Red John. Just showing him hanging out and doing regular life stuff.
Yeah.
Because he's still in his evil Samantha stalking lair, but no, my mother needs something, so I gotta get on the phone with her and listen about the problems she's having and offer to send her some money if she needs it. It's such a strange presentation of him because they're anti-mythologizing him.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he's just a normal guy. And I would think that maybe he probably does have a normal job.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find that out.
Oh, we're definitely going to find out. He's getting caught at some point in the show. The show lasted 4 seasons. He's getting caught at some point. Yes, the question is, I don't think this show would end without him having been caught. Maybe it's in the last episode. I don't know if they knew they were being canceled or not. We're going to find out as we go, I guess. But the point is, right, and this is what gets me about it. Actually, fun fact. Did you know that The Fugitive was the first show to have a last episode? They specifically asked that when they found out they were being renewed, they asked for extra money to do an episode where he catches the one-armed man. And the reason the network didn't want to do it, right? And the producers didn't want to do it but then if people see that episode in syndication, they'll stop watching the show, is what they honestly thought. They honestly thought that if people watching it in syndication every day at 4 p.m. saw an episode where he caught the one-armed man, they would never watch the show again. People didn't really understand how people watch television at the time.
No.
But anyway, that's a fun story. But anyway, so I don't know if he gets caught in the last episode. I don't know if he gets caught at all. I'm assuming he gets caught at some point. But again, I go back to my beloved The Mentalist, right? Where Red John is treated almost as a supernatural figure.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because he's so elaborate, he's so a cult leader. And again, everything he accomplishes makes so much sense when in the final, well, it's not the final season, but like the end of his story arc, we find out he was running a police union. And it's like, oh, okay. Now I understand how he pulled off everything he was able to pull off. The cops were on his side.
They were part of the gang.
Yeah, they were part of the cult. Well, no, he actually had two organizations. He had a cult of people who killed for him. And then he had a police union that, without realizing, covered up for the cult. It was very clever because they had to come up with something to explain how he could have pulled all this off. And that's what they came up with. And I think it was really smart. But here, you would never imagine they're anti-mythologizing Jack in a way that I find really interesting. Like, they are going out of their way not to present him as mythic in any way, shape, or form. Like, they are... To have him just walk up. Yeah, it was creepy when he was in the darkness talking with her, but fundamentally, right, when he just walks up to A. Martinez, right, to Nick, you understand that it's just a guy. It literally is just a guy. It's a guy in makeup, and it's a guy who's happy to kill people, but fundamentally, there's nothing supernatural about him. And then in this episode, to show him just like on the phone with his mother dealing with stuff, they're going out of their way to say, no, he's just a stalker, right?
He's a regular stalker.
He's just a regular stalker. He's more violent, he's more extreme, but at the end of the day, this is no different than any other twisted man who gets obsessed with a woman. And I really like that about the show. There is a clear identity.
It's serious. Yeah. And I guess that's what when we start talking about it, right?
Yeah.
At the end, it is fairly like there isn't an awful lot that you can say. Like the last one, yes, you have some problems that's going to be a continuing problem.
I think so.
Here it works fine.
Yeah.
Like this is easier, I think, to watch than Criminal Minds ever was.
Yes.
Because it sets things up pretty straightforwardly.
Oh no. Yeah, it's a much clearer, simpler procedural.
Yes.
And that's what you said, and you're completely right. It is a much simpler procedural that's easy to wrap your head around. And I think part of that comes from the fact that, well, I mean, it's what we said when we started watching this show. The difference is that whether they talk about it or not, whether they admit it or not, Criminal Minds is a horror show.
Yes.
Right? Millennium was a horror TV show. Criminal Minds is a horror TV show.
Yes.
You know, we keep saying that it's like, and you know what? Something I say frequently, Doctor Who is a horror TV show. The original Doctor Who wasn't. The modern Doctor Who is a horror show. At the start of every episode, a monster kills somebody, and then we go to a seemingly innocuous place, and then we find out there's a monster running around, and he deals with the monster every week. Structurally, there is no difference from between an episode of Doctor Who and an episode of Supernatural. Right?
Yes.
Or indeed, Criminal Minds. But this is a cop show, and that's the difference. That's why it has that additional watchability. This isn't a horror show. This is a cop show.
Yeah, and what was it? There was something that came to me in terms of the horror show, but it'll come back to me if we keep talking. But yeah, this is Jack of all trades as a villain is not over the top. He's just a stalker.
Yeah,
and he's a horrible stalker, and he's spending. And I would argue that it's his hobby.
Probably. He's definitely got a day job. I think you're right.
Yeah, and he's not married, and he doesn't have children or anything else. The only thing he has is his obsession with Sam.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, it's hard to figure out. We say it started, it's going to be interesting to find out.
Exactly. Like, honestly, I'm hoping we get his take on it. I'm hoping to hear his take on how.
And I'm wondering if it started even before she figured it out.
Him out, maybe. Maybe he somehow tipped her off. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean that's because he got tired
of never getting any credit.
Yeah, never getting any credit, never being understood, and so therefore there has to be something somewhere. I need a little more feedback, is what it would be. Right. I think I need a little more feedback than I used to be getting. So I have
That's an interesting idea.
And then he sets himself up as in opposition. He has to set himself up in opposition. So we've got this profiler cop that's sort of starting at the FBI, and he seems to be tracking all of this stuff down anyway. And he slowly becomes obsessed with her.
Were we writing were we writing it? That is definitely what his origin story would be. I don't know if they're going to go that way, but it would track perfectly with what we've seen of his character so far.
And what would and this will lead him eventually to being caught, because if it had been the first profiler had been male,
he wouldn't have had the same obsession.
No, he would not have gotten the same obsession. He might have had the same play. He might have wanted the same playability, but it would have had a different structure.
A completely different structure. Yes. Yeah. No, it's definitely, she has become his romantic obsession, like all stalkers.
Yes. Yeah.
I will be interested to find out, like, what they say, if we get in deep, what his motivation is, or if they try to explain him. Because that is one of the biggest things about this show, and I think it's the thing that's impressing me so much, is its embrace of the mundanity of serial killers. Of not mythologizing them, of not thinking of them as anything special. And Criminal Minds definitely thinks serial killers are something special. Because it's a horror show. No, because it's a horror show. And if you want to have a successful horror show, your monster has to be extra scary. This isn't a horror show. It's a cop show that just wants to say, this is a thing that some people are, and here is how we have to deal with it.
Well, as they say, I mean, that's basically what Bernero wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
Was create this semi-mythological show.
There are dragons, and here are the people who slay the dragons professionally.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that meant, and all the dragons have to be bigger than mundane.
Of course. No, absolutely. I understand why the show is the way it is.
Yes.
It's just so weird to watch a show with the same essential premise with such a diametrically opposed idea of what a serial killer is. I find that fascinating, and I'm going to be interested to see how that moves forward. And again, I've watched, you can't imagine doing a scene in Criminal Minds where the replicator is just getting on the phone, dealing with, like, admin at his mother's, retirement home or something. They would never do that scene. They would never in a million years do that.
Or having a whole bunch of time spent dealing with getting the cable guy to come and fix his cable.
It's just like basic stuff. No, but it's like this show wants to reinforce that he's just a guy. And this is just a stalker. And it's a horrific stalker, and he's incredibly dangerous, but there's nothing mystical about him. There's nothing magical about him. There's nothing special about him. He is just a guy. And again,
in the end,
yeah, he is nothing more than just a sad, pathetic stalker, right? He is just someone who is capable of more violence than most stalkers, but that's it. Yeah, so I'm just saying,
hopefully Sam will get to tell him that.
I really do hope so. I'm excited to see I'm really excited to see where this goes.
Yeah.
But, hopefully the episode to episode gets a little more engaging. Because they're perfectly good, but you're not, they're not great episodes of television for the most part.
Well, let's see if we can have one that will stick with us.
Well, I mean, the Jack one was really great last time we did this. 106. Yeah. That was a really great episode. It was the first episode we saw where we're like, oh, wow. Like this episode.
But it had.
This episode this show can bring it when it needs to.
Well, but only once in 8.
8 episodes, that's true. But,
and it had A. Martinez.
A. Martinez. Yeah, that did help a lot.
And we had Jack.
Yeah, and we had Jack. So you're right. Maybe it'll only kick it up to third gear when Jack is in a Jack episode. But at least we know, at least we know it can get there. That's all I'm saying. All right. So we'll leave it there with 2, as you said, perfectly fine episodes.
Yep.
Perfectly acceptable episodes of television. For now, though, we want to thank you for listening. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, if there's any profiling related fiction you'd like us to check out, please drop us a line at profilingcriminalminds@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. If you were listening to this on an app or podcatcher, please rate, review, and subscribe. That's how people find out about the show. We're going to be back here next week with more of this show. Oh my God, are we going to have to watch a movie Ali Walker was in between seasons? I just realized. Maybe a Robert Davi movie instead.
Let's rewatch the Wise Guy episodes.
Let's just watch his episodes of Wise Guy again in the arc I call Albert Sirico Did Nothing Wrong.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you back here for more Profiler, but until then, I'll say that's right. Au revoir.
And have a good week.